Today we've come to Amesbury Banks in Epping Forest, said to once have been the home of Boudicca and the Iceni tribe. Alan Miles and Kevin Rowan-Drewitt join us to talk about the history of the legendary warrior queen. Hi, you've joined us to share about the legend of Boudicca. You've researched the subject quite a lot, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Right, we've come to Epping Forest. So
Lovely,
what can you tell us about this place?
Well, this place is called Amesbury Banks, right? It's named after events that happened actually 500 years after Boudicca. It's named after a guy called Ambrosia Aurelianus, who was a Romano-Briton who rallied the Roman British people after a huge Saxon revolt in about 450 BC.
You mean Romano?
Romano-British. That's right. Yes, he was of royal. His parents that were killed in this skirmish with the Saxons were said to have worn the purple, which meant they were of royal in the Roman court, and he rallied the local people and made a massive defeat against the Saxons, which carried on for about 50 years, the Romano-British battling with the Saxons, until finally King Arthur made a decisive victory at Mount Badon in about 500 AD. And Amesbury means the mound of Ambrose, and that, or Ambrosius, as it's named. But the place is more famous for being one of the reputed last battles that Boudicca fought against the Romans in the big uprising in about 60 AD.
Okay. How many were in Boudicca's camp?
Oh, by the time... well, she started off, they came from Norfolk. They were the Iceni tribe, the Celtic Iceni tribe, who her husband was what they call The Celts didn't fight the Romans. When the Roman invasion came in 43 AD, the Celts didn't fight the Romans. They made peace with them straight away, and they were allowed to keep their lands and their laws up in Norfolk, the Iceni tribe. And what happened was they had to pay tribute and taxes to the Romans. So he remained as the king of the area. When he died, he was meant to have bequeathed his kingdom to the Roman emperor, but what he did, he split it between his two daughters, Boudicca's two daughters, and the emperor. And the commander of Britain, the Roman commander of Britain, wasn't happy about this one bit, so he went up into Norfolk, and he had Boudicca stripped and flogged in front of her tribe, and her daughters were raped. And this led that. History doesn't recall what happens in the months after these events, but a while after that, in AD 60, Boudicca led the revolt of the Iceni against the Romans. They rose up and they marched south and joined up with the Travantes, the other Celtic tribe below, who had been displaced out of their town of Colchester, which the Romans had taken over. Now, by this time, they'd grown to thousands, tens of thousands of Celts, and Colchester was very poorly defended because most of the Roman legion was up in Anglesey fighting the Druids up there. All there was a garrison of old men, women and children in Colchester, and Boudicca and her hordes, as they call them, laid waste to the whole of the town, and it was the Roman capital of Britain, so it was a big victory for them. More Celts joined them, so by the time they got to London, they'd swelled to about 60,000-70,000 people. Now, because most of the Roman legion was up in Anglesey, London too was unprotected. London, or Londinium as it was called then, was only 18-20 years old. It was just a small market town. Okay. And it was totally undefended. Now, the leader of the Roman legion, Suetonius Paulius, he'd ridden with his cavalry down to London because he'd heard of what was happening with Boudicca and her massive horde. And what happened, he found he didn't have any infantry with him, and he felt he could not defend London, so he abandoned it. He took all the men of fighting age with him, back towards Anglesey, and left London unprotected. And Boudicca and her huge army now just went into London and just killed everybody and totally took the city over as it was. Fueled and they were totally intoxicated with their victories now. They'd taken 2 of the Romans' main towns. They then marched up to St Albans and they ransacked that as well, so they'd now taken 3. And the reason they were doing this was because before the Romans came, up until around here, this was their land. This was all Celtic. They'd been driven back to Norfolk. So all they were doing was taking back the land that they felt was theirs. And then what happened was the Roman legion came down from Anglesey and they fought the final battle around this area.